focus of right now. Wilder, Fury 2, here we go.
It's time for our weekend picks. We got a decent card coming up tomorrow, a card that will have some ramifications moving forward. So we're going to start it off with the heavyweight fight between Joseph Parker and Shondell Winters. Now, Shondell, you know, when you look at the tape of this guy, he looks like one of these old guys that has his wits about him, that he's doing pretty good, given his age. That he's 39 years old, but he does seem formidable. Although when you review his body of work, that does lend some insight into why he looks formidable. Shondell hasn't faced a world-level opponent, you understand, somebody in the top 10 or even the top 20, you know, so you can look formidable depending on the level of competition you're faced with. Here, he's going to be faced with Joseph Parker, a skillful guy, yes, but not a guy with a mean streak, not a guy that has that dog in him. So I think that this creates a situation similar to the Rydell Booker Jermaine Franklin situation. Rydell Booker, who was 38 years old at the time that he took on the undefeated Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine, who was 13 years younger than Rydell. I mean, nothing says I'm 38 years old than a guy named Rydell. I mean, this is my age we're talking about here, okay? This is my tax bracket when it comes to father time. Guys from my generation, they got names like Elroy, Rydell, in this instance, Shondell. Is it a coincidence? I think not. I think not, okay? Those two guys, they're in the same age group. They're both 39 years old right now, okay?
Coincidence?
And in that Jermaine Franklin
I think not.
and Rydell Booker fight, you saw that the older guy, you know, he's got some experience. He definitely has his wits about him, and he's holding his own, but it's really due to the other guy in that situation being Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine Franklin is not yet, especially not at that time, was not yet a put-together enough fighter.
To close the show.
So he can't go in there and be bankable against the likes of a Rydell Booker.
You don't look too hot.
In this situation, you got Joseph Parker, who's definitely a skilled guy, tested at the world level, but he doesn't have a mean streak. He's not a killer. That creates a situation to where maybe Shondell can hang, because he does have some slickness to him, you know?
A little.
Guy's got some moves, knows how to stay off the center, plant a counter punch or two, though there's not much snap in those punches because, well, these are 39-year-old reflexes and 39-year-old legs we're talking about. But perhaps he can hang in there, not necessarily because he's on the level, so much as Joseph Parker hasn't been the strongest finisher. I mean, look at that Alex Lapie fight. You know, Alex Lapie is a lot more of a stationary target than Shondell is. It took Joseph Parker 10 rounds to get the referee to stop that goddamn thing. Alex Lapie is in Shondell Winters' age group, more or less. He's an old guy. He's an old veteran with a few moves.
10 rounds.
But he's nowhere near as athletic or mobile. And yet, it took Joseph Parker. It took Joseph Parker, who isn't even 30 years old yet. It took this guy 10 rounds to get the referee to stop this thing, okay? So I see this Shondell Winters fight, and I tell myself, well, this is a slightly harder target than Alex Lapie was. So Parker not being that much of a killer, this thing might actually go a couple of rounds. I'd love to be wrong about this thing. I'd love for Joseph Parker to go out there, show some moxie, show some gusto, and finish him quick. I'd love for that to be the outcome. It's just that I don't trust Joseph Parker, the otherwise very polite Joseph Parker, to activate the killer. If it took you 10 rounds to get Alex Lapie out of there, a stationary target, not athletic, a guy at all, okay?
Makes a good punch, though.
If it took you 10 rounds for that guy, a guy who angles his torso on the way in to plant punches might prove to be slightly more difficult. So I'm thinking that because Shondell's a bit of a trickster, a bit of a tricky fighter, likes to angle that torso away from the shots, to plant shots of his own.
He's got moves.
Because of this fight might actually go a couple of rounds before Joseph can't get a stoppage. I'm thinking TKO. I don't think Joseph gets the guy clean out of there per se, so much as the referee might wave it off after he sees that this 39-year-old fighter is taking too many clean shots. And I think that it won't get to that point up until maybe 8 or 9 rounds, maybe as far as 10. Shondell is significantly older than Joseph and smaller. I also don't think that Shondell has the same punch resistance that Alex Lapai had, per se. So it could all catch up to him as the fight progresses. That, maybe in the opening rounds, he's doing all right. But as the fight wears on, his age is going to catch up to him because he's never competed at this level, you understand. Shondell, he's never fought someone that was a former world champion, somebody that's somewhere in the top 15 or top 20. He's never fought nobody like that. So it's safe to say that it'll catch up to him, and it's really just a question of when. I think maybe 8 or 9 rounds. Joseph gets the guy out of it. We'll see. We'll hope that he can, because if he doesn't, I actually think that reflects poorly on Joseph. He can't get this kind of guy out of there. We then come to what is a more competitive fight out of the super flyweight division. A fight that is actually my favorite fight on the entire card, in spite of it not being the main event, though the main event itself does have some intrigue to address as well, and we'll address that a little later on. I'm talking about the WBA title fight between the reigning undefeated champion, Khalid Yafai, against Chocolatito, Roman Gonzales. Roman Gonzales has been quietly rebuilding himself since the Sisraket Sorun Visai fight. He's piled up 2 victories since suffering that crushing defeat, that crushing knockout, and he has been looking the part for the most part. Really banged up and beat the shit out of Moises Fuentes in 5, and he took out the Omel Diocos in 2. We have been seeing shades of the old Chocolatito, though we're not quite sure at this point if he's all the way back. It would take a victory over the likes of a Cal Yafai to ensure us that Chocolatito is back. He's really still got it. This fight could have ramifications moving forward, ramifications that could so affect the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, depending on who the victor is. For those interested in that story, I'll leave the link to that video in the description box. For now, we've got to look at this matchup and try to forecast what we're going to see on Saturday night. I'll tell you that Cal Yafai is a good, solid, young, undefeated fighter, undefeated champion, though he really hasn't competed at quite the same level as Chocolatito has for as long as Chocolatito has. I'll tell you that I don't think that Cal Yafai is the puncher that Chocolatito is. That mid-range to inside, this kid's lethal. Chocolatito. We saw those patented Chocolatito hooks, those patented Chocolatito uppercuts, busting up Moises Fuentes, proving that he's still got pop in those punches, he's still got snap, he's still got reflexes, and he's still got that, which was also indicative in the Omel Diocos fight, a fight that lasted all of 2 rounds. Essentially what I'm getting at is, ahead of this fight, I give Chocolatito the edge in power. And I dare say I give him the edge in speed. It does appear to the eye that he throws the snappier punches with more mustard on them. And that's not saying that Cal doesn't have formidable offense of his own, so much as his offense is not his calling card, the way Chocolatito's offense is his calling card. That in his heyday, that's what he was known for, being an offensive whirlwind that can throw a barrage of punches, hard punches. On the defense department, just so happen to think that at least in these last 2 fights we've seen from Choco, he's been a little bit more judicious, a little bit more cautious, having been knocked out in the heat of the exchange with Sisraket Sorun Visai, where before he put together a combination, then moved to the left of the guy or the right of the guy to continue the combination. We see a Chocolatito that takes a half step back. He doesn't want to put too many punches together as to not get caught. I actually think this favors him as his career progresses, because you don't want to get greedy with your shots. You don't want to sit there too long throwing punches. That just affords the other guy the opportunity to catch you in between those punches. Defensively, Cal Yafai's pretty good himself. I do think his defense is going to allow him to hear the final bell in this fight, but if I had to go with my gut, I guess I'm feeling that Chocolatito is going to do what he's got to do to outwork Cal Yafai. That Cal's going to hang in there. But as far as trading and exchanges, I heavily favor Chocolatito in the pocket. He throws the shorter, sharper, and harder punches than Cal Yafai. Oh, Cal's the slightly longer guy, and he's the undefeated guy, so perhaps he's a little bit more fresh. But when the fists start to fly, I happen to think Chocolatito's bringing the bigger guns. So it's either Cal Yafai is going to engage in these exchanges and get lumped up, or he's going to stay away from them altogether and get outworked. I see a situation where Chocolatito could become the new WBA super flyweight champion by way of a points decision. I can understand if those of you out there are interpreting this forecast as me leaning heavily towards Chocolatito, but you'll forgive me if I'm leaning heavily towards a more proven guy against more proven quality of competition over a longer duration of time who just so happens to have been a 4-division champion. The only guy that beat Chocolatito was Sorun Visai. He lost 2 fights, but those were 2 fights to the same guy, and Cal Yafai is not the spitting image of Sorun Visai. He is neither as big a puncher as Sorun Visai, nor is he a southpaw like Sorun Visai, so it is a different situation entirely. I'm not telling you guys who to pick and why to pick them. I'm telling you who I'm picking and why I'm picking them, for all I know. Maybe Cal Yafai rises to the occasion and surprises me tomorrow. I'm just telling you what I think and what it's based on. It's boxing, folks. Anything can happen. But based on the aforementioned factors, I do like Roman Gonzales to win a points decision tomorrow night and become the new super flyweight WBA champion. So that's who I'm going with, and that would be the why. Just so happen to think that Roman Gonzales is the better boxer. In the heat of the exchange, I think he's got more methods to get punches around and or through the guard, the way he angles himself when he plants those left hooks to the body, or that patented uppercut of his that could very well split the guard
on Yafai
as it ascends and connects with the other guy's face. I like Roman Gonzales to win this fight, so that's who I'm going with. I'm going with Chocolatito. We then come to tomorrow night's main event, the fight between Mikey Garcia and Jesse Vargas. Mikey's campaign to prove that he belongs in the 147-pound division. It's going to take some convincing, and that convincing is going to come by way of a victory over Jesse Vargas, because what he showed against Errol Spence was piss poor, and if anything, it communicated the opposite. It communicated that, Mikey, you don't belong up here.
Nope!
Jesse Vargas is coming down in weight for this fight a few pounds because his last fight was at junior middleweight, at just above 147. I think it was a catch weight of 150, whereas, Mikey, his last fight was at welterweight, and this fight is at welterweight. And the difference here, the area of intrigue, is that Jesse's not as big a puncher as Errol Spence, and because he's not as big a puncher, he's not going to get the same respect from Mikey that Errol Spence got. That opens the door for this to actually be competitive, for Mikey to show more boxing, more of his ability than he did against Errol, because all he could do against Errol was hang on for dear life and shell up. Try not to get hit too hard. I think we're going to see an aggressive Jesse Vargas. A Jesse Vargas similar to the one that we just saw against Humberto Soto. A guy who's going in there throwing shots with bad intentions, showing aggression, showing volume. I don't think that Jesse Vargas is going to keep it long and keep it simple, fight behind his jab to keep the little guy out. I think that Jesse wants to make a statement, so he's going to be opening up quite a bit in this fight, and in doing so, that's going to open the door for Mikey to actually get in this thing. I'll say that in the realm of tacticians and technicians, I think Mikey is actually the better technician than Jesse, although Jesse's no slouch. But Mikey's got his shit to him, he's got his nuances. That up jab, which I'm a big fan of, that up jab can be very deceptive because it's coming from below, so it has a similar effect to an uppercut, to where a guy can't see it, it splits the guard because it's coming from below. He's got that up jab, he's got those very accurate hooks. I dare say that in the realm of accuracy, I think Mikey gets the edge there. Now, when it comes to power, it's anybody's guess. Jesse Vargas was never that big a puncher in the welterweight division, but Mikey's proven absolutely nothing in the welterweight division. So who you want to give the edge in power to is anybody's guess. In truth, not too stuck on that because I don't think that this fight is going to be won through strength of arms. I don't think this fight is going to end in a knockout. I could see a knockdown happening. I could very well see Mikey Garcia planting a compact hook mid-range to inside that surprises Vargas and perhaps puts him on the canvas. I could very much see that happening. Because Vargas is the taller, longer guy, he throws the wider shots, whereas Mikey's got smaller arms, tighter hooks, less space to put a punch in there, more ability to really drive the hook, catch the bigger guy by surprise. I mean, Mikey's fought a statuesque fighter before in Robert Easter. You remember that?
I remember.
Granted, I think that Jesse Vargas is a better boxer than Robert Easter is, and ahead of this fight, he's certainly a bigger challenge than Robert Easter is for Mikey, because Mikey's really not cut out to be a welterweight, even if he does win this fight. But better still,
What a tall guy.
Mikey has had to deal with a guy that has imposing size before. He has that experience to draw from. Jesse, tall guy, yeah.
Busy guy.
And he's a busier puncher than Robert Easter was in that Mikey Garcia fight. But I reiterate, the more Jesse Vargas opens up, the more opportunities he gives the little guy to slip a punch in there. I really don't see Jesse playing keep away with Mikey all night. I don't see him fighting this fight on the balls of his feet behind his jab, looking to keep Mikey out. I don't see it that way. I think that Jesse Vargas is looking to impose his will on Mikey. He's looking for a brawl. He wants to prove that he's the bigger guy, so he's going to act like it.
At least I think so.
But in doing so, he may give up his height at times and be within range of Mikey's shots. You know, I'm taking it on faith that Mikey Garcia and Robert Garcia have the right battle plan for this fight, because those guys, they take their preparation very seriously, and for the most part, it has worked for them. It worked for them against the undefeated Dejan Zlatijanin. It worked for them against the undefeated Sergey Lipinets. That's a victory that aged well, because Sergey Lipinets has since moved up to welterweight, and he's tearing things up. But, Mikey beat that guy. He took his O, he beat Dejan Zlatijanin, he took his O, he beat Robert Easter and took his O. So I have some stock, I have some faith in the preparation of Mikey and Robert Garcia. Those guys know how to prepare for a fight. I think this is going to be a close one. I think that there's going to be a lot of punches thrown in this fight. But I think that down the stretch, Jesse might fade because he's the one who had to come down in weight, whereas for Mikey, he might feel a little bit invigorated that he didn't have to cut as much. That he's at 147 when really he belongs at 140. Whereas Jesse, your last fight was at 150, okay? You came down for this one. That might show up in your energy reserves as the fight wanes on. So I'm going to go with Mikey Garcia to win a split decision. In a close one. And not that anybody cares, but apparently there's a WBC baby belt on the line, the WBC Diamond, which could be used as a segue to challenge for the full title, though I don't know that they would use it for that here when Mikey's already fought Errol and lost.
In his last fight.
I don't think Jesse's going to be fighting Errol, is he?
Yeah, whatever. Nobody cares.